She was a virgin at 18 and was taken to the most feared millionaire farmer by all. The man who was supposed to love her was hiding more than pain, and what she found in the attic of that farm will never be forgotten. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. Continuing. The wind cut through Clara Vass's face as the car drove down the dirt road, each pothole a reminder that she was moving away from everything she knew. At 18, she carried only a small suitcase and a collection of letters yellowed with age. Letters she had written since she was 8, to a man she had never met, but who haunted her thoughts like a silent obsession. Adrian Marconi. He whispered the name on his lips like a forbidden prayer. He had grown up hearing that name in his mother's nightmares, in the hushed conversations between relatives, always accompanied by blessed crosses and promises that one day everything would be resolved. His stepfather, a man of unshakable faith, had explained only that it was destiny, that the Vass blood carried an ancient promise, and that Clara was the chosen one to fulfill it. The farm appeared on the horizon like a dark mirage. The large house, built of dark stone, seemed to grow out of the earth like a natural extension of the Minas Gerais soil. Tall, narrow windows watched the road like suspicious eyes, and the trees around them grew twisted, as if some invisible force were molding them against their nature. Clara felt a shiver run down her spine, not of fear, but of recognition. It was as if she had been there before in forgotten dreams. The driver, a man of few words whom her stepfather had hired for the trip, left the suitcase on the porch and drove off without looking back. Clara stood alone in front of the heavy, carved, wooden door, each detail of the sculpture telling a story she could not read. Flowers intertwined with thorns, a crescent moon over mountains, and in the center a coat of arms that she recognized from the letters she kept, the same symbol she had drawn compulsively since she was a child. Before she could knock, it opened. The man who stepped into the doorway was not the monster who had haunted the familiar whispers, nor the romantic savior she had imagined in her teenage fantasies. Adrian Marconi was nearly 40, with dark hair streaked with grey at the temples, and eyes so intensely green they seemed to hold ancient secrets. He wore a simple white shirt, the sleeves rolled up, and there was something about the way he carried himself, a restrained tension like a wild animal forced into domesticity. "Clara," he said, and the way he said her name made her feel like it was the first time she had actually heard it. His voice was deep, filled with a melancholy she couldn't hide. He picked up his suitcase without ceremony and stepped away from the door, a silent invitation for her to follow him. The sigh. Entrance to the house was grand, with a crystal chandelier that cast dancing reflections on the antique papered walls. The smell was of polished wood, wilted flowers, and something else, something Clara couldn't quite place, but it stirred a deep, disturbing memory. Family portraits stared out from gilded frames, serious faces judging her as she passed. "Your room is on the second floor," Adrian said, climbing a polished mahogany staircase. His footsteps echoed in the heavy silence of the house, and Clara noticed how he avoided looking directly at her, as if her presence were both necessary and painful. "I hope you feel comfortable." The room he showed her was large and decorated with antique furniture, but there was something too feminine about it, as if it had been prepared for someone else. The curtains were delicate lace, the bedspread hand-embroidered, and on the dressing table sat a bottle of perfume still half empty. Clara touched the cool glass and felt Adrian tense behind her. "She's not coming back," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This room is yours now." When Clara turned to ask who she was, Adrian had already left, closing the door softly behind him. She was left alone with the silence and the uncomfortable knowledge that she had just stepped into a story that had begun long before she was born, and that might not have a happy ending. The first night on the farm was a whirlwind of strange dreams and startled awakenings. Clara would wake up with the feeling that someone was watching her, but when she opened her eyes, she found only shadows dancing on the walls and the sound of the wind blowing against the ancient windows. The perfume she smelled in the room was not her own. It was sweeter, more mature, as if it belonged to a woman who knew the secrets of seduction. In the morning, she found Adrian in the large kitchen, making coffee on a cast-iron stove that must have been decades old. He wore faded jeans and a plain t-shirt, but there was an easy elegance to his movements, a calculated precision that made Clara wonder what his hands would feel like touching her skin. The thought made her blush, and she quickly looked away. "Did you sleep well?" he asked without turning around. He seemed to have eyes in his back, or perhaps he simply knew she was there, as if her presence altered something in the air around him. "Yes," Clara lied, accepting the cup he offered her. The coffee was strong, bitter, just the way she liked it, though she had never mentioned that preference. "The house is impressive." Adrian smiled for the first time since he'd arrived, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Awesome is an interesting word. My family has always preferred words like haunted, cursed, damned." He sipped his coffee slowly, watching her reaction. "But maybe you see things differently. Maybe that's the point." "What point?" Clara asked, sensing that there were layers of meaning in every word he uttered. Instead of answering, Adrian walked to the window that overlooked the back of the property. "I'm going to show you around the farm today. There are places you can go and places where it would be better not to go, at least not yet." They walked out together, when the sun was at its highest, and Clara discovered that the estate was larger than she had imagined. There were stables with magnificent horses that snorted nervously when Adrian approached, as if they sensed something about him that made them uneasy. There were abandoned orchards where the fruit grew wild and sweet, a pond with water so clear that it reflected the sky like a perfect mirror. "It was hers," Adrian said as they stopped in front of a glass greenhouse partially covered in ivy. "Eloise, my ex-wife." The word came out with difficulty, as if it still hurt to say. "She grew roses. She had an almost obsessive passion for them." Clara approached the greenhouse and peered through the fogged glass. Inside, among the broken pots and rusty tools, a single black rose grew in a stone pot, its petals so dark they seemed to absorb the light around it. It was the most beautiful and disturbing flower she had ever seen. "Why did she leave?" Clara asked, unable to take her eyes off the impossible rose. Adrian was silent for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with such deep pain that it made Clara's heart ache. "Because I didn't know how to love her the way she needed. Because this house, this family, we have a way of destroying beautiful things." He turned to Clara, and for the first time their eyes met fully. "That's why I don't understand why you're here. Why anyone would send something so pure to a place like this." "I'm not pure," Clara said, surprising herself with her honesty. "I have thoughts that a proper girl shouldn't have. I write things that would make my family disown me. And ever since I was a child, I've dreamed of you, Adrian. I dream of your eyes, of your voice, of—" She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. The silence between them turned electric. Adrian took a step toward her, then stopped, as if fighting a powerful impulse. "Those letters you wrote," he said, his voice hoarse. "Do you think I never read them?" Clara felt the world spin around her. "Did you receive it?" "Some," he admitted. "Not all. Someone intercepted our mail. Someone who wanted our fates to intertwine." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that made Clara want to comfort him. "You don't understand, Clara. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be this close to me." "Why?" she asked, taking a step toward him. "Because I'm not a good man," Adrian replied, but he didn't pull away. "Because there are things about me, about this family, that would make you run if you knew. And because even so, I can't imagine this house without you anymore." The next few days unfolded in a delicate dance of closeness and distance. Adrian showed Clara the safe corners of the farm during the day, but at night he disappeared, locking himself in his office or walking the fields until the wee hours. Clara heard his footsteps in the hallway, always stopping at her door, but he never knocked. It was as if he were fighting against something stronger than his will. Clara began to explore the house on her own, discovering dusty rooms filled with furniture covered in white sheets, a library with books in languages she did not recognize, and always in each room the unsettling feeling that she was not alone. Portraits on the walls seemed to follow her with their eyes, and more than once she was sure she heard whispers coming from empty rooms. It was during one of these explorations that he found the first real clue to the mystery surrounding Eloise. In the attic, among old trunks and broken furniture, he discovered a collection of letters tied with red ribbon. They were addressed to "My Eternal Love" and signed in delicate handwriting, "Forever yours, E." But they were not letters to Adrian. The name that appeared repeatedly was Rodrigo, someone with whom Eloise was planning to run away. "I can no longer pretend to love a man who sees me as a trophy," one letter read. "Adrian offers me comfort, security, but my heart belongs to you. Soon we will be together, far from this house that seems to suck the life out of those who live within its walls." Clara felt a conflicting mix of relief and guilt. Relief because Adrian hadn't lost a great love. He had lost a woman who had never really been his. Guilt because she was reading secrets that didn't belong to her, violating the privacy of a pain that still bled. When she came down from the attic, she found Adrian in the kitchen, preparing dinner with a concentration that seemed forced. He wore a navy blue shirt that brought out the color of his eyes, and Clara felt that familiar pang of desire that left her breathless. "Did you find anything interesting up there?" he asked, without looking up from the pan. Clara hesitated. "How did you know I was in the attic?" "This house has its own sounds," Adrian said, finally looking at her. "I've learned to read them over the years. Every floorboard, every creaky door, every footstep different from my own." He stepped closer to her, and Clara caught the scent of his skin. Masculine, warm, with a hint of spice. "What did you find, Clara?" "Letters," she admitted, unable to lie when he was so close. "Letters from Eloisa to another man." Adrian's face changed from surprise to pain to something like relief. "Rodrigo," he said, as if the name were an old wound that had finally healed. "I knew it. I always knew there was someone else. I just never had the courage to look for the proof." "Why didn't you say anything? Why did you let her leave?" "Without a fight." Adrian ran his hand over his face, a gesture of deep weariness. "Because I didn't love her either, not the way she deserved. Our marriage was arranged by the families, an attempt to unite lands to resolve old issues. I respected Eloisa. I wanted her to be happy, but I never felt for her what—" He stopped, his eyes fixed on Clara. "What?" she whispered. "What I feel for you," he confessed, his voice hoarse with emotion. "It's crazy, Clara. You've been here less than a week and already I can't breathe properly when you're near. I can't sleep knowing you're right across the hall. I can't stop thinking about what it would be like—" He didn't finish his sentence, but he didn't need to. Clara felt the same way, a desire that grew with every glance they exchanged, every accidental brush of fingers. Every night she spent imagining what it would be like to be touched by those hands she watched with fascination during the day. "Adrian," she began, but he shook his head. "No," he said, pulling away. "You don't understand what you're saying. You don't understand what I'm capable of when I lose control." His eyes darkened, and for the first time Clara saw something dangerous in them, not violence but an intensity that frightened and excited her at the same time. "Then show me," she said, surprising them both with her courage. "Stop treating me like I'm going to break. Stop running away from me like I'm a child." Adrian watched her for a long moment, his breathing visibly altered. Then slowly he moved closer to her until their bodies were almost touching. Clara could feel the heat emanating from him, could see the small scars on his hands, could count every grey strand in his hair. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know," Clara replied, looking up at him. "I know exactly what I'm asking for." For a moment it seemed like he would give in. His hand reached up to cup her face, and Clara closed her eyes, waiting for the touch she had been craving for days. But then he drew back, letting the cold air fill the space between them. "Not like this," he said. "Not while there are secrets between us. Not while you don't know the whole truth about this family, about me, about why you're really here." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Adrian's words echoed in her mind. "Why are you really here?" There was something sinister about the way he said it, as if his presence on the farm was part of a larger plan she didn't know about. She got out of bed and went to the window, looking out over the fields bathed in a full moon. The landscape looked different at night, wilder, more menacing. It was then that she heard it, a low, almost imperceptible sound coming from somewhere in the house. Music, a melancholic piano melody that seemed to spring from the walls themselves. Clara recognized the music. It was the same one she had heard in her dreams since she was a child, the same one her mother would hum in her saddest moments. She walked down the stairs barefoot, her heart pounding. The sound was coming from a part of the house Adrian had never shown her, an entire wing that was always locked. When she reached the heavy, dark wooden door, she saw that it was locked several times, as if someone had tried to ensure that whatever was on the other side could never escape. "You shouldn't be here," Adrian's voice said behind her, making her jump in fright. Clara turned and saw him standing at the end of the hallway, wearing only pajama pants, his bare chest revealing defined muscles and more scars than she had imagined. His eyes shone in the dim light with an intensity that made her swallow hard. "I heard music," she said, her voice shaking. "The same music from my dreams." The blood seemed to drain from Adrian's face. He approached her slowly, as if she were a frightened animal that might bolt at any moment. "What song?" he asked, though from the tone of his voice Clara suspected he already knew the answer. She began to hum the melody and watched Adrian close his eyes as if each note were a stab. When she finished, the silence between them was thick with a tension that seemed ready to explode. It was her favorite song, Adrian said finally. Eloisa played it every night before she went to sleep, on this piano. He pointed to the locked door. "After she left, I had this wing sealed. I couldn't stand hearing the echo of her music." "But I just heard it," Clara insisted. "Someone was playing it just now." Adrian shook his head slowly. "Impossible. There's no one here but the two of us. And I was in my room, trying not to think about you lying across the hall, trying not to imagine what it would be like." He stopped speaking abruptly, but Clara took a step towards him. "What would what be like?" he asked, his voice bolder than he felt. "What it would be like to touch you," he said, the raw honesty in his answer making Clara's heart race. "What it would be like to feel your skin beneath my hands, to hear you whisper my name, to see your eyes close in pleasure." Each word was spoken with an intensity that made Clara feel as if she were on fire inside. "Adrian," she whispered, stepping closer. "No," he said, but he didn't pull away. "You need to know the truth first. You need to understand that your presence here is no coincidence." He took a deep breath as if gathering his courage. "I've been receiving letters for years, not your childish letters, other letters. Letters from someone who knows intimate details about my life, my dreams, my fears. Someone who orchestrated our union." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of letters? Letters that describe you. Your smile, the way you bite your lip when you're nervous, even that nightgown you're wearing right now. His eyes roamed over her body, and Clara realized she was wearing only a thin cotton nightgown that left little to the imagination. "That's impossible," she muttered, crossing her arms over her chest. "The letters stopped coming the day you arrived here," Adrian continued, "and now you say you hear Eloisa's song, a song she learned from her grandmother, which she said originated from an old family legend." He stepped closer, and Clara could feel the warmth of his body. "The legend speaks of a bond between two souls, a bond that transcends time and death. You're trying to scare me," Clara said, but her voice was weak. "I'm trying to protect you," he replied, reaching up to touch her face. When his fingers made contact with her skin, Clara felt as if an electric current shot through her body. "Because despite everything, I'm falling in love with you. And that might be exactly what someone wants." Before Clara could respond, the piano began again, louder this time, the notes echoing through the halls like an invitation or a threat. Adrian stiffened, pushing Clara behind him in a protective gesture. "Stay behind me," he said, pulling a key from his pocket. With precise movements, he began unlocking the door's various locks. "If anything happens, you run, understand? Don't look back, don't try to help me, just run." The last lock gave way with a loud click, and the music stopped. Abruptly, Adrian pushed the door open with a long groan. On the other side, only darkness. "Eloisa!" he called, his voice echoing in the void. "I know you're there." And then from the depths of the darkness came a laugh, feminine, low and full of a bitterness that made Clara grip Adrian's arm tightly. "Finally," said a voice that seemed to come from every direction at once. "I finally brought her home." The woman who emerged from the shadows of the forbidden wing was no ghost. It was Eloisa, but a transformed version of the person Clara had imagined through the letters and photographs. She was thinner, with long hair that looked as if it hadn't seen a haircut in years, and her eyes held a disturbing intensity. She wore a white dress that had once been elegant, but now hung loosely on her petite frame. "Eloisa," Adrian whispered, and Clara could hear the shock in his voice. How am I still alive?" she asked, walking toward them with measured steps. "Or how did I manage to hide here for so long without you knowing?" A cruel smile curved her lips. "You were always so absorbed in your own grief, Adrian. You never noticed the sounds coming from the basement. Never questioned why your supplies were missing." Clara felt her legs go weak. "Have you been here the whole time?" Eloisa's eyes turned to her, and Clara saw something that made her instinctively recoil. It wasn't madness, it was a cold, calculated, dangerous lucidity. "Little Clara," Eloisa said, stepping closer. "So young, so innocent, so perfect for what we need." She reached out and touched Clara's face with icy fingers. "You have no idea, do you? You have no idea why you were really brought here." "Eloisa, stop," Adrian said, stepping forward. "If you have something against me, take it up with me. Leave Clara out of this." "Leave Clara out?" Eloisa laughed, the sound echoing through the halls like shattering glass. "But she's the centerpiece of it all, my dear ex-husband. She always has been." Her eyes fixed on Clara again. "Tell her, Adrian. Tell her about the Marconi family curse. Tell her about the blood that must be spilled in every generation to maintain our prosperity." Clara felt the world spin around her. "What curse?" Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of torment. "It's superstition. An old story." "That—" "Who killed your mother?" Eloisa interrupted cruelly. "Who drove your sister to suicide? Who drove your father mad before he died?" She turned to Clara. "Every 20 years, the Marconi family must offer something to the earth. Young, pure, willing blood, or else everything we have built will crumble." "You're crazy," Clara muttered, but something inside her recognized the truth in Eloisa's words. The mysterious deaths in the family, her mother's nightmares, her stepfather's insistence on sending her to that farm. "I ran away because I found out," Eloise continued. "I found out that Adrian intended to use me. But I wasn't a virgin, I wasn't pure enough. The ritual wouldn't work on me." Her eyes glinted with mischief. "So I started writing the letters. To him, to his family, planting the seed of the idea. A perfect young woman raised in the faith untouched, Clara Vass." "No," Adrian said, his voice breaking. I would never do that to you, Clara." "Not consciously," Eloisa admitted, "but the curse has its ways of working. It plants desires, manipulates circumstances. Do you really think you fell for it naturally, or were you led to it?" Clara looked at Adrian, seeing doubt and horror spread across his face. It all made terrible sense, their instant attraction, the intensity of their feelings, the way she seemed destined for this place. "But there's a catch," Eloisa continued, walking toward the piano that dominated the center of the room. "The ritual must be done out of love. The victim must willingly choose the sacrifice, and to do that—" She played the keys softly, the familiar melody filling the air. "She must believe she's saving the person she loves." "I won't allow it," Adrian said, positioning himself between Clara and Eloisa. "If there's a curse, if there's something that needs to be broken, I'll find another way." "There's no other way," Eloisa replied. "I've tried, I've researched. The only way to break the curse is to give her what she wants, or to end the Marconi line altogether." She stopped playing and looked directly at Adrian. "And you wouldn't be able to kill yourself, would you? Not when you've finally found something worth living for." Clara felt something breaking inside her. You planned this together." "No." Adrian turned to her, desperation in his eyes. Clara, I swear to all that is holy, I didn't know. I thought I had met you by chance, by fate. I thought my feelings were real." "And they are," Eloise said softly. "That's the beauty of the curse. It makes everything real. Your love for her is true, Adrian, as is hers for you. It makes the sacrifice all the more powerful." Clara stepped back, feeling cornered by revelations that shattered everything she believed in. "I need to get out of here. I need to think." "There's nowhere to run," Eloisa said. "The curse won't let you go. Not now that you know the truth. You belong to this land, Clara. Your blood was promised before you were even born." "Then I fight," Clara said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "If there is a curse, if there is something supernatural going on, then I fight it. I will not be sacrificed like a sheep." Eloisa smiled, and for the first time since she had appeared, the smile seemed genuine. "Now you are beginning to understand. The struggle is part of the ritual, Clara. Your resistance, your courage, your refusal to give in easily, all of it fuels the power of sacrifice." Clara looked at Adrian, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. They were caught in a web that had been woven long before they met, and every move they made only entangled them deeper. "There is a way out," she said finally. "There has to be." "Perhaps," Eloisa admitted, "but you will have to find her alone, because from now on, Clara, Vas, you can trust no one else, not even the man you love." Clara spent the next 3 days in a kind of trance, moving around the house like a sleepwalker. Adrian tried to get closer, to explain, to apologize for something that might not even be his fault, but she couldn't look at him without feeling a devastating mix of love and betrayal. Every time their eyes met, she saw the doubt that consumed him. Were his feelings real or just the product of some supernatural manipulation? Eloisa had disappeared again, but her presence hung over the house like a toxic cloud. Clara found notes on her desk, written in delicate handwriting. "Time is running out. The new moon is approaching. You can save him if you choose." Each word was a drop of poison in her already troubled mind. It was during one of her solitary walks through the fields that Clara encountered the man. Tall, with grey hair and eyes that seemed to have seen too much, he was standing near the pond, watching the water with a thoughtful expression. "You must be Clara," he said, without turning around. "I am Rodrigo Mendes, the man for whom Eloisa left her husband." Clara felt her heart race. How did you get here?" "Eloisa called me," he replied, finally turning to her. There was a deep sadness in his eyes, but also a steely determination. "She said it was time to finish what we started years ago." "Finish how?" Rodrigo sighed, pulling a yellowed envelope from his pocket, showing the truth about the Marconi curse, about what really happened to the women of this family. He handed the envelope to Clara. "Inside are documents, photographs, death certificates. The truth that Eloisa discovered and that almost scared her to death." With trembling hands, Clara opened the envelope. The first photographs made her gasp. Young women, all of them looking peacefully asleep, but with a pallor that only death brings. She recognized some of the faces from the portraits in the house, but it was when she got to the documents that the truth revealed itself in all its cruelty. "It wasn't the curse that killed them," Clara whispered, the words falling like ash from her mouth. "It was poisoning, arsenic, administered slowly over months," Rodrigo confirmed, "to make it appear as a mysterious illness, a family curse. The Marconi patriarch began this tradition over 100 years ago, when he discovered that killing his young wives and inheriting their estates was more profitable than messy divorces." Clara felt nausea rise in her throat. "What about Adrian? Does he know?" "I don't think so," Rodrigo said, but his voice held doubt. "Adrian was raised to believe the legend, but—" He hesitated. "But he's a Marconi, and when push comes to shove, when the family's finances are stretched as they are now, ancestral instincts can speak louder." "The finances?" Clara repeated. "The farm is mortgaged down to the last acre," Rodrigo explained. "Adrian has debts he can't pay. Your death, Clara, and the inheritance your family would leave him would solve all his financial problems." Clara let the documents fall, the wind scattering the photographs across the field. It all made sense now. Her family's insistence on sending her there, the dowry they'd vaguely mentioned, the speed with which everything had been arranged. "So I was sold," she said, her voice dead. "My own family sold me." "Sold and handed over like a lamb to the slaughter," Rodrigo confirmed. "But Eloisa won't let that happen. She may have her flaws, she may be obsessed and a little unstable, but she's not a murderer. She wants to expose the truth. Why didn't she do this before? Why did she stage her own escape?" "Because she found out too late, when Adrian had already started poisoning her food," Rodrigo said, his voice thick with pain. "She faked her death, hid in the basement of the house, and has spent all these years collecting evidence, waiting for the next victim to come along so she can save her and destroy the Marconi line once and for all." Clara looked toward the house, where she could see Adrian's silhouette in the office window. Even knowing everything, even with all the evidence in front of her, her heart still ached at the sight of him. The love she felt was real, but was his too. "What does she want me to do?" Clara asked. "That he pretends not to know anything. That he lets Adrian believe he's earning his trust back, and that when he tries to poison her for the first time, we'll be there to catch him in the act." "What if you're wrong? What if Adrian is innocent?" Rodrigo looked at her with an almost fatherly expression. "Then you will be the first Marconi woman to survive the first year of a relationship with a man from this family. But Clara," he touched her shoulder gently, "don't bet your life on his innocence, not when there's so much at stake." When Clara returned home, she found Adrian in the kitchen, preparing dinner. He smiled when he saw her, a smile so genuine and full of relief that it almost made her forget everything she had just learned. "You're back," he said, coming closer. "I was afraid you'd gone." "Where would I go?" Clara asked, forcing a smile. "This is my home now, remember?" Adrian pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, Clara felt her world crumble around her. Because even though she knew he might be a murderer, even though she knew her life was in danger, she still loved him. And that realization was more terrifying than any curse or poison. "I made your favorite dish," Adrian said against her lips. "I hope you're hungry." Clara looked at the dish he had prepared, the dark sauce covering the meat, and felt her stomach churn. This was it, the test that would determine whether Adrian was victim or villain. "I'm starving," she lied, picking up her fork with hands she hoped weren't shaking. Clara raised her fork to her mouth, pretending to chew while discreetly pushing her food to the side of her plate. Adrian ate normally, chatting about improvements he wanted to make to the farm, plans for the future that included the two of them. His acting was perfect, or his feelings were genuine. Clara could no longer tell. "You're not eating," Adrian observed, frowning in concern. "I am," Clara lied, taking another forkful and pretending to swallow. "It's delicious." When Adrian got up to get more wine, Clara quickly threw the contents of her plate onto the plant by the window. She prayed that Rodrigo and Eloisa were wrong, that her paranoia was just the product of minds disturbed by years of secrets and lies. 3 days later, the plant was dead. Clara stood before the vase, watching the yellowing, wilting leaves, feeling something die inside her too. There was no doubt anymore. Adrian was trying to kill her, slowly and methodically, just as his ancestors had done to their wives and Clara. His voice behind her made her jump. "What are you looking at?" She turned away, forcing a neutral expression. "The plant died. What a shame. It was so pretty." Adrian stepped closer, eyeing the vase with what seemed like genuine surprise. Strange. She was healthy yesterday. His eyes met hers, and for a moment Clara swore she saw something like guilt in his gaze. "Maybe it's the weather. It's been awfully dry lately." That night, Clara pretended to drink the tea Adrian had made for her, pouring it down the sink when he wasn't looking. She pretended to have constant headaches, nausea, weakness, all the symptoms a victim of slow poisoning would have, and with each symptom she acted out, she saw relief in Adrian's eyes, as if everything was going according to plan. It was on the 5th night that she decided to confront him. "Adrian," she said, lying on the bed, pretending to be weaker than she really was. "Can I ask you a question?" Of course, he replied, sitting down next to her on the bed. His hands caressed her face with a tenderness that almost made her believe it was all just a terrible nightmare. You love me? The question seemed to catch him off guard. How can you ask that? Of course I do. Even though I know I'm going to die. Adrian stiffened. You're not going to die, it's just a feeling of discomfort, it'll pass. You won't, Clara said softly. And we both know it. She sat up in bed, summoning all the strength she had. The question is, are you killing me because you have to or because you want to? The silence that followed was deafening. Clara saw the exact moment Adrian's mask fell, revealing beneath it a tormented man, guilty but resigned to his fate. You know, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I know. The question is, how long did you know? Adrian ran his hands over his face, aging 10 years in 10 seconds. I've always done it. Ever since I was a kid and watched my father do the same thing, he explained to me that it was necessary, that it was our responsibility to carry on the family tradition. He looked at her with teary eyes. But I never thought I could do it until I met you. And what changed? I fell in love, he confessed, his voice breaking. I really fell in love for the first time in my life. And that made it worse, because now I have to kill the only person I've ever loved. Clara felt tears stream down her face. Then why don't you stop? Why don't you run away with me? We can leave, start over somewhere else. With what money? Adrian laughed bitterly. The farm is bankrupt, Clara. I owe more than I can pay. Your death and the money your family will pay me for the accident is the only thing that can save me from complete ruin. So that's it? Clara asked, disappointment evident in her voice. Money? No, Adrian screamed, jumping out of bed. It's not just about money, it's about survival. It's about continuing to exist. Do you think I want to do this? Do you think I don't think about giving it all up every single night? Then give up, Clara said, standing up. As well. Choose me. Choose love. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, and Clara saw the battle raging in his soul. For a moment, she believed he would choose love. For a moment, she saw the man he might have been if he had not been born a Marconi, but then he shook his head. I can't, he said. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm really sorry. That's when Eloisa appeared at the bedroom door, holding a shotgun in her hands. But I can, she said, pointing the gun at Adrian. And I will. Eloisa, no, Clara shouted, positioning herself between the two. Don't solve violence with violence. Why not? Eloisa asked, her eyes fixed on Adrian. He was going to kill you, Clara. Slowly and painfully, like he did to me, like your father did to all the others. Why does he deserve mercy? Because I still love him, Clara replied, the words spilling out of her mouth before she could stop them. Even though I knew everything, even though I knew he was going to kill me, I still love him. Eloisa slowly lowered the gun, looking at Clara as if she were a creature from another planet. Then you are stronger than me, she said. Or more foolish. I haven't decided which yet. Adrian looked at Clara with an expression of pure disbelief. How can you still love me, after everything? Because true love has no logic, Clara replied. Because despite everything, I saw who you really are beneath all that pain and family tradition. I saw the man you could be if you chose to be. It's too late for choices, Adrian said. It's never too late, Clara replied. But you have to want to change. You have to want to be better than your ancestors were. Adrian looked at her, then at Eloisa, then at his own hands that had prepared poison with the same delicacy with which they had caressed her face. What do you want me to do? He asked, and for the first time since Clara had met him, he sounded like a lost man asking for directions. Adrian's public confession should have been the end of the story, but it turned out to be just the beginning of something even more complex. Rodrigo arrived the next morning with 2 lawyers and a private investigator, ready to turn the Marconi farm into a crime scene. But Clara stopped them at the door. No, she said, blocking the entrance. Not like that. Clara, Tried to kill you, Rodrigo argued, his voice thick with frustration. You have all the evidence you need. He confessed. Why are you protecting him? Because he stopped, she replied. When he had the chance to kill me last night, when I was vulnerable and defenseless, he couldn't. That has to mean something. In the days that followed, the farm became a strange battlefield where love and justice waged a silent war. Adrian isolated himself in his office, refusing to eat, sleep, or speak to anyone. Clara could hear him walking the halls all night long, like a tormented spirit seeking redemption. It was Eloisa who brought the proposal that would change everything. There is a way, she told Clara one rainy afternoon, as they watched Adrian work the fields like a man possessed. A way to break the cycle without destroying Adrian completely. What way? He needs to confess publicly, not just to us, but to the authorities. He needs to hand over all the family documents, all the evidence of past crimes. And he needs to use his own fortune and what's left of it to compensate the victims' families. Clara felt a weight on her chest. He was going to prison. Probably. For a few years at least. But it would be a prison with a clear conscience, not a life sentence of carrying this secret. Eloisa looked at her with an almost maternal expression. And you, Clara? Would you be able to wait for him? The question echoed in Clara's mind. 4 days. Could she love a man who had admitted to wanting to kill her? Could she build a future on the ashes of so much suffering? Most importantly, would it be fair to the other victims to simply forgive and forget? The answer came one night when Clara found Adrian in the abandoned greenhouse, standing before the black rose that continued to bloom impossibly in its stone pot. Eloisa said you have a proposal for me, he said, without turning around. I do, Clara confirmed, moving closer to stand beside him. But first I need you to answer me one thing. Why is this rose still alive when everything around it has died? Adrian touched one of the black petals with infinite delicacy. My grandfather planted it on the grave of the first wife he killed. He said that as long as it bloomed, the curse would continue. But if anyone plucked it, he shrugged. Well, no one has ever dared to find out. What if I pulled out now? Clara, no. Adrian turned to her, his eyes wide with fear. We don't know what might happen. We do know, she said softly. We know that the Marconis will have to learn to live without blood on their hands. We know that you will have to find a way to sustain this. Farm without killing innocent people. We know that you will have to be better than your ancestors. Without waiting for an answer, Clara knelt down in front of the pot and began to dig into the soil with her hands. The rose's roots were deeper than she had expected, intertwined with what looked like ancient bones. When she finally managed to pull it out completely, the flower made a sound that wasn't quite a scream, but it made both of their hairs stand on end. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the greenhouse began to shake, the glass shattering, and Clara felt as if all the dark energy on the farm was being sucked into an invisible black hole. When everything calmed down, Adrian was kneeling beside her, his hands covered in the same black dirt that stained hers. It's done, she said. Now you can choose who you want to be. Adrian looked at her, then at the dead rose in her hands, then back at her. I choose you, he said. Even if it means losing everything else, even if it means prison, even if it means spending the rest of my life trying to make up for the harm I've done. He took her hands, still covered in dirt. But can you forgive me? Can you love a man who nearly killed you? Clara looked into his eyes and saw not the tormented man she had met weeks ago, but someone completely new. Someone who had chosen redemption. Over tradition, love over fear. I can, she said, but on one condition. Anyone. We do this right. You confess everything to the authorities. We work together to compensate the victims' families. And if you go to prison, I'll be here when you get out. Adrian smiled for the first time since Clara had met him, a genuine smile, free of the pain he always carried. Even if it takes years. Even if it takes a lifetime, Clara replied. And when he kissed her, there amid the broken glass and the sacred earth, Clara knew they had found something more powerful than any curse, the choice to love, despite everything, to build something, beautiful on the ruins of the past, to believe that even the most lost souls can find their way back home. The months that followed were a roller coaster of emotions and challenges that tested every fiber of Clara and Adrian's love. The confession to the authorities was only the first step in a journey that would prove far more complex than either of them imagined. Adrian not only admitted his own guilt, but handed over decades of family documents that revealed a web of corruption involving lawyers, doctors, and local authorities that had covered up the Marconis crimes for generations. The scandal exploded in the national media. The cursed family, the killers of Minas, the poison of tradition, the sensationalist headlines multiplied every day. Clara woke up to find journalists at the farmhouse gate, cameras filming through the windows, helicopters flying over the property. Her private life became a public spectacle, and there were times when she wondered if it wouldn't have been easier to simply run away and never look back. But then she saw Adrian, thin and pale, wearing handcuffs whenever he left for court hearings, and she remembered why she had chosen to stay. He was paying for what he had done, but he was also fighting to become a better person. During her visits to the prison, she could see the transformation slowly taking place. The tormented man she had known was giving way to someone calmer, more aware of his responsibilities. "You don't have to do this," he would say whenever she came to visit. "You can start over. Find someone who doesn't have blood on their hands." "I can," Clara agreed, "but I don't want to. I want you, Adrian, not the man you were, but the man you're becoming." Eloisa proved to be an unexpected ally during this time. Despite all the resentment she carried, she helped Clara deal with the media, organize the necessary documents for the trial, and most importantly, find and compensate the victims' families. Some refused any contact, others demanded impossible amounts of money, but most simply wanted recognition. They wanted the deaths of their daughters, mothers, sisters to finally be recognized as murder, not as a medical mystery. Doing the right thing is rarely easy, Eloisa told Clara one afternoon as they were sorting through paperwork in her office. "But it's necessary, and from what I can see, you and Adrian are willing to do what's necessary." Rodrigo also became a fixture on the farm, no longer as Eloisa's secret lover, but as a lawyer and advisor, helping to navigate the legal aspects of compensating victims. Clara discovered that he was a man of integrity, who had genuinely loved Eloisa and had suffered as much as she had from their forced separation. "You have a chance we never had," he told Clara, "a chance to build something new on the ruins of the past. Don't waste it." Adrian's trial lasted 6 months. Clara attended every hearing, always sitting in the front row where he could see her. In the most difficult moments, when prosecutors described the Marconi family's crimes in detail, when relatives of the victims cried out for justice, she kept her eyes fixed on him, reminding him that he was not alone. The sentence was 8 years in prison, reduced to 4 years due to his voluntary confession and cooperation with authorities. As the judge read the verdict, Clara saw Adrian close his eyes in relief. It wasn't freedom, but it was a chance at redemption. 4 years, he told her, during their next visit. "Will you wait for me for 4 years?" "I'll wait for you as long as it takes," Clara replied, touching his hand through the glass that separated them. "But Adrian, I need you to understand one thing. When you leave, you're not going back to the farm. We sell everything, pay off what you still owe the families, and start over somewhere else. No past, no family traditions, no nothing but the two of us." Adrian smiled, and Clara saw that it was the smile of a free man, even behind bars. "Just the two of us," he agreed. "It's all I've ever wanted." Selling the farm was a painful but necessary process. Clara kept only a few personal items and all the letters she had written to Adrian over the years. Letters he was finally able to read, discovering the pure and loving heart she had kept for him since childhood. With the money from the sale, she was able to compensate all the victims' families and still had enough left over to buy a small house in a rural town where no one knew the Marconis' story. It was there that she waited, working as a teacher, building a simple and honest life, preparing for the day when Adrian would come back to her. Eloisa and Rodrigo finally got married in a simple ceremony at the registry office with Clara as a witness. They moved to Portugal, where Rodrigo had family, finally starting the life they had dreamed of decades ago. "Thank you," Eloisa said to Clara on the day of her departure, "for helping me find peace, for showing me that love can be stronger than revenge." Alone in her new house, Clara counted the days until Adrian would be free. She wrote him letters every day, telling him about her new life, about her plans for when he got out, about the future they would build together. And every night, before going to sleep, she looked at the only photo she had of him, taken the day they met, when he was still just a handsome, mysterious stranger who inhabited her dreams. Now he was much more than that. He was her choice, her redemption, her future, and she couldn't wait to start building that future with him. Adrian's day of freedom came one September morning, just as the first leaves were beginning to turn yellow and the air carried the sweet scent of autumn. Clara had woken before dawn, unable to sleep the night before. 4 years. 4 years of letters, weekly visits, limited phone calls, and the constant hope that their love would be strong enough to survive the separation and the transformation they had both experienced. She drove to the penitentiary in silence, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the sound of the engine. What if Adrian had changed too much? What if prison had hardened his heart? What if 4 years of reflection had convinced him that it would be better to start his life away from her, away from any reminder of his dark past? But when Adrian walked through the prison gates, a simple bag in his hands, Clara knew her fears were unfounded. He was different, thinner, with more grey hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But when their eyes met, she saw the same man who had chosen love over fear, redemption over tradition. They hugged right there in front of the gates, not caring about the people passing by. Adrian smelled of cheap soap and industrially washed clothes, but beneath it, Clara could still smell his essence, that warm, masculine scent that had fascinated her since day one. "You came," he whispered against her hair. "I promised," Clara replied, holding him as if he might disappear at any moment. "I always keep my promises." The drive to the new house was silent, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had a lot to say, but knew they had time to say it. Adrian watched the landscape through the window with the eyes of someone who had forgotten how big and colorful the world was. "It's beautiful here," he said, when they reached the small town where Clara had built her new life. "It's simple," she corrected, "but it's ours." The house was simple indeed. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a garden where Clara grew herbs and flowers, nothing that resembled the somber grandeur of the Marconi farm. Adrian walked through the rooms slowly, touching furniture, stopping in front of photographs, recognizing objects she had saved from her previous life. "You kept your letters," he said, seeing the box on the desk. "All of them. Even the ones you've never read." Clara approached him. "Adrian, I know it's going to be hard, starting over, building a new routine, dealing with the people in town who will one day find out who you were. If you want to leave, if you want to start on your own somewhere else." He interrupted her with a kiss. Not the desperate kiss from 4 years ago, filled with guilt and fear, but something completely new. It was the kiss of a man who had found peace with himself, who had paid for his mistakes, and was ready to build something beautiful on the ashes of the past. "I don't want to go anywhere," he said against her lips. "I want to stay here, with you, and learn to be the man you always believed I could be." Over the next few months, they established a new, normal routine. Adrian found work at the local carpentry shop. His hands, which had once prepared poison, now created beautiful and useful furniture. Clara continued teaching at the local school, and slowly her story became simply the teacher who waited for her imprisoned husband. People asked questions, of course, but over time they accepted that bygones were bygones. They were married in a simple ceremony at a local church, with only a few people in attendance: Clara's co-workers, Adrian's boss, and a few neighbors who had become friends. There were no big celebrations, just heartfelt vows made before God and the people they had chosen as their family. "I, Adrian, promise you, Clara, that I will love you all my life, I will protect you, respect you, and work every day to be worthy of your love. I promise that I will never again let fear or tradition speak louder than my heart, and I promise that I will build with you a life based on truth, love, and hope." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she made her own vows. "I, Clara, promise you, Adrian, that I will love you for the man you are today, not the man you were yesterday. I promise that together we will build a legacy of love that erases the shadows of the past. And I promise that no matter what the future brings, we will be together to face it." A year after their wedding, Clara discovered she was pregnant. When she told Adrian, he remained silent for so long that she began to worry. Finally, he pulled her into his arms. "A new life," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "A new Marconi, who will grow up knowing only love." "No," Clara corrected him gently, "a new Silvervas. Our baby will have my last name. The Marconi name dies with us." Adrian smiled, kissing her forehead. "Silvervas. I like the sound of that." The night their daughter was born, a little girl with green eyes like her father and dark hair like her mother, Adrian cried as he held her for the first time. "She will never know curses," he whispered. "She will never know fear or dark traditions or blood on her family's hands. She will only know love. And stories," Clara added, watching father and daughter get to know each other. "I'll tell her our story when she's older. How two people found each other in the darkest of circumstances and chose the light. How love really can conquer all, if you're willing to fight for it." 10 years later, as Clara watched Adrian teaching his daughter to ride a bike in the garden of the house they had expanded over time, she knew they had done it. They had broken the cycle of pain and created something new and beautiful. Adrian had become the man she had always known he could be: kind, loving, hard-working, a devoted father, and a husband who loved her with an intensity that grew with each passing day. And when her daughter asked why Daddy sometimes looked sad and looked away, Clara simply said, "Because he remembers a time when he wasn't happy. But now he is. Now we all are." Their love had begun in the shadows, fueled by secrets and dark traditions, but it had blossomed in the light, strong enough to create a new family, a new story, a new legacy. And every night, when Clara lay next to the man who had nearly killed her and then chosen to save her, she knew they had proven something powerful, that true love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every day, with every small gesture, with every kind word, with every moment you decide to be better today than you were yesterday.